Well, it's been another whirlwind week in Washington, and President Trump capped it off by announcing a pretty significant policy shift. Mr. Trump traveled to Miami Friday and in a speech in Little Havana announced his administration's plans to roll back Obama-era policies that eased restrictions on Cuban trade and travel. Critics say the move is a step backwards for relations with the country, but the president says it's necessary to bring more freedom to the Cuban people.
They made a deal with a government that spreads violence and instability in the region, and nothing they got. Think of it, nothing they got. They fought for everything, and we just didn't fight hard enough. But now, those days are over. Now we hold the cards. We now hold the cards. The previous administration's easing of restrictions on travel and trade does not help the Cuban people. They only enrich the Cuban regime.
Caitlin Huey-Burns is a CBSN political contributor and national political reporter for Real Clear Politics. All right, Caitlin, we know President Trump campaigned on making this shift in Cuban policy here, but why now?
Well, this comes after a pretty tumultuous week in Washington, as you said, but also for this president. He is in an embattled state right now, given everything going on with the FBI investigation, which we'll talk about soon. This is also an issue that really endears him to the Republican Party. Many Republican rivals of his during the presidential campaign campaigned on similar things. Marco Rubio, the senator from Florida, who the now president used to affectionately refer to as Little Marco on the campaign trail, he has been lobbying the president on this. They have met and talked about this. You saw Marco Rubio out there today. So this is a way for him to kind of announce that he is doing something that he campaigned on. It's a way for him to show his base. And also, this is relatively new policy. It's only 2 years old. So the way to kind of roll that back, they figured now was the time.
You think there's an element of this of trying to look ahead to midterms and then again to 2020?
Exactly. This is a big sign that the Trump administration is trying to project, which is we are unraveling a lot of what the Obama administration did. And you're seeing that theme in the executive orders that he has signed throughout his young presidency, and especially with this Cuba policy. It's not a complete rollback of this. There are some significant changes, but it really is a sign to his voters saying, look, we campaigned on unraveling these policies. We're undoing a lot of what Obama did.
All right. And so he did a few other things this week that seemed to fly under the radar. Immigration program, DAPA, which is the Deferred Action for Parents of Americans. Look, are there some people thinking that some of these policy changes that he did this week is part of maybe deflecting again from this entire investigation into Russian collusion?
Right. Well, this particular immigration piece is really interesting because he campaigned on this, but he also kept in place the protections for children, known as DACA. So he kept that in place and is rolling back DAPA for the parents. And so that's pretty significant because his supporters wanted him to take a really hard line on immigration, and he campaigned with really fiery rhetoric on immigration. But he also would say things like, you know, we need to take care of the children, children who came to this country through their parents, through no fault of their own. And so he's been trying to kind of weigh that line. I'm interested to see how his supporters take what he did today, not full throttle in terms of rolling back these provisions.
But on the deflection question, what do you think? Do you think there's an element of that going on?
Well, we've seen the White House try to set the tone each Monday, it seems. We saw that over the campaign, but remember, this week was supposed to be Workforce Week. Last week was supposed to be Infrastructure Week. They're trying to set up programs for the president to introduce new policy, introduce new ideas and that sort of thing. But of course, those become very muddled through the president's own actions. He's been very prolific on Twitter this week, I should say. And and so, you know, he's kind of getting in his own way. So certainly they try to turn the page, but he kind of turns it right back.
And let's talk about those tweets, because yes, while all this has been going on, he has been, you know, certainly in the Twitter sphere. And early Friday morning, you know, he tweeted that he is under investigation. How important is this shift in his particular rhetoric?
Well, the tweets seem to suggest that he was confirming the reports in the Washington Post and then subsequently elsewhere that he was, in fact, under investigation for obstruction of justice as part of the Mueller probe. What the White House is saying is that he was referring to the reports of this and was not, in fact, confirming this. But the bottom line here is that this is, again, an issue of the president's own making. Remember, the firing of Comey, the way in which he did it, the shifting stories that the White House had compared to what the president was saying, his reasons for the firing. Now he's tweeting about Rosenstein, the deputy attorney general, and that's getting into some very controversial territory.
You know, it seems like he essentially threw Rosenstein under the bus. Is that a fair assessment?
I think so. I mean, Rosenstein, of course, was appointed by this president to be the deputy attorney general, stepped in the absence of the attorney general Jeff Sessions after he had to recuse himself from the Russia probe, given all of that. The Rosenstein, remember, appointed Mueller to oversee this investigation as a special counsel. And so the president at first, the White House at first, I should say, said that it was Mueller who recommended the firing of James Comey, when in fact that memo that Mueller wrote, I'm sorry, Rosenstein, the memo that Rosenstein wrote did not suggest actual firing. And so they've been trying to play this game here, but this again just goes back to the president frustrated that this probe has been going on and actually getting himself further and further into trouble by talking about it.
All right, Caitlin Huey-Burns, thank you so much.
Thank you.